we had an exchange with the recruiter. Actually, it wasn't even a recruiter. It was a founder of a staffing agency who works specifically with radiology. And it was pretty interesting because he made some comments about, the industry and what he's seeing. And, I actually sent him a message because having lived this life like you, Vishal, I kind of wanted to learn more about it. I think the last time we recorded, I was using a recruiter at that time, kind of like what you were when you first started. And you kind of inspired me to move beyond that. So
I still do for anyone.
It's the way to go. We definitely believe that here. But there is some value that these guys have without a doubt. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about how he does things. Because, this is their livelihood and that's what they do. So I actually had a really good conversation with him about his business model. And I learned a few interesting facts, which I think are actually pretty generalizable to the entire industry that I'd want to share with our listeners, because I think it's important that we as physicians, we all know this. So
this recruiter staffs exclusively interventional radiology or all radiology seats?
Yeah, great question. All radiology seats.
I see. Okay.
But a pretty good proportion of his business, I think it's up to 50%, is IR.
Okay. Good to know. So he knows the market landscape relatively well at this point.
Definitely. We're talking about 100 different clients coast to coast.
I see. Okay.
So it was pretty remarkable. I think the first question I asked him, and I wasn't expecting him to give me a response, but he did, which I credit him for. I asked him what his profit margins were. And
wow.
Yeah, I know.
Straight off the bat, huh?
Straight off the bat.
Yeah.
Just went straight for it.
Yeah.
And why not? What do I have to lose? And he was very gracious. And he actually told me between 30 and 40%.
Wow.
Yeah. So I want listeners to think about that. That's a lot.
I found something pretty similar as well. I think that there are gamuts of interventional radiology or staffing companies in general. And there are a few that I think are some of the legacy larger ones that cover multidisciplinary efforts around the country. And I think they have, there's probably, the jury's out on it, but maybe a more respectable or healthy 20%. But there are a number of other firms that really take some of their clients to the cleaners, I guess would be the right term. And I've seen up to 50%.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And I think we touched on this last time. There's also a component of, even if they know that that's not going to secure the physician, they still have their contract with the client, which then prevents any particular physician with working with that client if they've ever been formally presented. It's a major pitfall that I advise anyone to look into, the idea of presentation to a client.
So if the file has been presented, they hold a non-compete prior to the physician ever being employed there?
That's correct.
So the physician has no contract.
That's correct. I'm not an attorney, so I have to say this I have to give that disclaimer, but that's my understanding, is that it's essentially a sandwich agreement. They've got an agreement with the physician if you were to sign, and then an agreement with the client. The client's the first person that they sign the agreement with.
Wow.
So they're double protected in the case where they have a physician and a client both sign. But if they sign with just one, the client, even though you have not signed an agreement with them because maybe you never work there, their agreement with the client still says, we presented this doctor to you, you can't work with them directly.
That is fascinating. What it brings to mind to me is that essentially you're paying someone multiples and on a daily rate a part of your work because they had a head start.
Correct.
Is there another way to think about that or to phrase that, or are you sort of seeing it a similar way, Kavi?
I see it a similar way. Now you got to think about it from their shoes, right?
Absolutely.
So from their shoes, they're thinking, hey, I'm going out there and I'm establishing relationships. Okay. I'm creating opportunities for other physicians to work. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, Vishal, you probably see this in your own life, but this stuff's hard.
It is. Yeah.
It's a lot of business development.
Yeah.
It's a lot of networking. It's a lot of phone calls. It's getting connected with the right people.
Yeah.
So I think one can make an argument from the locums agency side is, hey, we're doing that for you. Okay. All you have to do is show up and do a good job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Now, that's not to say that we as physicians can't do that. We can absolutely do that. Yeah. But there is a price to be paid for it. Now, whether or not you think 30 to 40% is reasonable, that's up to any given person. But the reason I bring up that number is not to say that locums agencies are terrible, right? But it's to really democratize this information because I think all physicians should know what's at stake.
Absolutely.
Right.